Trump rages at NATO and says we'll be out of Iran soon. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. 2.5 weeks into the operation in Iran and a couple serious kills further decimating the terror regime. The head of national security, Ali Larijani, and Gholam Soleimani, the head of the Basij, blown to pieces. Now, the Basij, under Soleimani, was the crowd control in Iran, the gutless maniacs who killed thousands of innocent people 2 months ago. And now the leader of that unit is dead. The U.S. and Israel also attacking Basij forces throughout Iran in whatever locations they're at. There's an airstrike on one of them right there. As protests ramp up this week ahead of the Persian New Year, destroying the Basij will be mission critical for the Iranian people to have a chance to take back their country from the regime so the U.S. can finally walk away from Iran and end this operation, something the president says is happening soon.
We'll be leaving in the near future. We've had great support from countries in the Middle East, great support, but we've had no support from, essentially, no support from NATO. I say, oh, we have to put out this cancer. It's a cancer. Somebody said they could leave today and it would take 10 years to rebuild the damage that's been done. But I think we have to make it a little bit more permanent. We shouldn't have any other president having to go through this kind of a thing. We don't ever want to have that problem again, not with lunatics. We can't have lunatics controlling nuclear weaponry.
You can't have lunatics controlling a major, massive military that can inflict really any kind of damage on the United States or the Greater West or our forces that are all throughout that region of the Middle East. Now, many on the left claim that the head of national security who was just killed, Ali Larijani, was a potential agent of change inside Iran. There's a lot of lefties in this country that think that there were so many good people inside of that regime, the same kinds of people that worked with John Kerry to give them a nuclear deal, and that he should have been spared by these airstrikes, is the claim. Let's show you Ali Larijani from March 10th, just a couple weeks ago. Iran does not even a week ago. Iran does not fear your empty threats. Even those greater than you could not eliminate the Iranian nation. Watch out for yourself, lest you be eliminated. Okay, here was Larijani just 5 days ago.
It's clear they're running out of steam. Trump's problem is that he doesn't understand that the Iranian nation is mature and determined. No matter how much pressure he puts on, our determination only grows.
Okay, how determined is Iran's regime now, I wonder? That one of the most important people in that regime is now dead. Two of the most, actually, just in the last 48 hours or so. At what point is there going to be a large enough defection that this regime falls is the better question, as it is just picked apart and decimated almost every single day. Right now, it's propped up by a new Ayatollah that might be dead and also might be gay. Meanwhile, the media doing its best to tank Trump's popularity with Iran. USA Today asking, how long is this war going to go? Where's the exit for Trump? It's been 2 weeks. And in that very, very abbreviated period of time, we have decimated the military of a country with 90 million people. This is not a small operation. We didn't go to war with Barbados. This is Iran. Trump's critics also trying to make a dent by using Joe Kent, the Army veteran who went to work for the administration under Tulsi Gabbard, resigning as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center today, saying he can't support the operation in Iran, saying there was no threat and that America is controlled by Israel. Now, Kent has faced accusations that he was a leaker himself from his position. The president said this today.
I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it. When somebody is working with us that says they didn't think Iran was a threat. We don't want those people.
Yeah, Iran is not a threat, is a tough one to try and convince anyone of. Here was the House Speaker Mike Johnson on the same.
I'm on the Gang of Eight. I got all the briefings. We all understood there was clearly an imminent threat, that Iran was very close to the enrichment of nuclear capability, and they were building missiles at a pace that no one in the region could keep up with. The commander-in-chief and his administration had a very difficult decision to make. I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings, clearly.
So you can oppose the operation and now 2-week war with Iran, but you do lose credibility when you claim that Iran was no threat and Trump is controlled by Israel. As we showed you last night, Trump's been talking about the need to dismantle this regime since I was a toddler. Iran's plan was very clear. The regime was rapidly building up a massive contingent of ballistic missiles, thousands of them, and they were doing this very quickly. So eventually, nobody would be able to decapitate their nuclear program like we just did. They were going to be able to defend it vastly with a lot of power. Over the past 2 weeks, we've mowed the lawn down so low that CENTCOM believes that Iran will not be a threat for perhaps 10 years. Trump wants to completely neuter Iran, but also says we'll be out of Iran soon. So nobody really knows where he's going in this moment. If we're just mowing the lawn nice and low and buying several years, maybe 10 years, or if we're smothering it in glyphosate. Regardless, the administration contends this operation was necessary to cut Iran down before we got to the point where they could no longer be cut down at all. When Iran got to a point with ballistic missiles that an attack from the West would elicit a terrifying response. The United States has military bases all throughout the Middle East, areas very, very close to Iran. You might hate that. You might disagree with that, but that's just the way it is. And we have to keep tabs on a very dangerous part of the world. You can't let a regime this psychotic, that's basically become a satanic cult, build a fully operational military and become a threat. You have to stop that before it happens. Something our fair weather friends in NATO refuse to accept, which is something that has exasperated the president.
All of the NATO allies agreed with us, but they don't want to, despite the fact that we help them so much. We have thousands of soldiers in different countries all over the world, and they don't want to help us, which is amazing. I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake, and I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test. If you're going to allow countries that are sick and demented, and they are demented, to have nuclear weapons, everybody in the whole world should be very thankful. And I'm disappointed in NATO, very disappointed.
We put thousands of soldiers in their countries to make our NATO allies feel safe for a very long time. We've positioned our own troops far from their families, in dangerous places and in not so dangerous places, just to alleviate some of the concerns of a dangerous world. We've done this for a very long time. And there's a frustration there that's justified, certainly. The problem with this operation is that it feels random when it's not. It felt as though we were searching for a war to start, and that's the reason why the narrative got so out of whack. The reason it feels that way is that the West has been so irresponsible with the handling of Iran for a very long time. Nobody wanted to mess with this mess because it's so messy, the Iran problem. But think of every Islamist idiot who has ever walked into a bar or a restaurant or a synagogue or a building, an office building in the West, and screamed, Allahu Akbar, and blew himself up or opened fire. Iran is controlled by thousands of Muslim clerics who share that ideology, the kinds of people that program those people to do that. It's controlled by radical Islam. And knowing that, how big could you actually let Iran's military get with a good conscience? All right, Senator Tim Sheehy is on the Armed Services Committee. He is a former Navy SEAL and combat veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, sir, it's good to have you on the show and good to see you. I want to start with the critics of Trump's Iran operation making a huge deal about Joe Kent, the Army veteran who was working under Tulsi Gabbard, quitting his post, saying there was no imminent threat from Iran, saying basically that we are controlled by Israel. Wanted to get your reaction to his claims as somebody who also served.
Well, I think it's unfortunate this narrative has been allowed to take hold on both the left and right of the American political spectrum. As you know, Rob, listen, I mean, Israel has been fighting a battle for its very survival for generations, for hundreds of years, thousands of years. The Jewish people have had to, and of course, in the last 70 years, Israel has had to literally fight every single day for its right to survive. To assume that somehow they control us or control our foreign policy, I think is just wrong. It's unfortunate that Joe believes that. He's a good man. He certainly has the right to his opinion. But the reality is, Iran has been murdering, killing, and maiming Americans for 47 years. Their foreign policy has been death to America. And to say that they don't present a clear and present danger to our nation every single day this regime exists, I think is just factually incorrect. And the facts show that, whether it's the 1983 barracks bombings, whether it's the USS Cole, whether it's the thousands of Americans who were killed and wounded across the Middle East in the last 25 years, Iran's mission is to kill us and end our way of life, plain and simple.
Yeah, I think the reason that this has become such a popular, I guess, narrative, what this man believes, what Joe Kent believes, is that it just seems so random because we let Iran get away with this for so long, right? For decades, we let Iran just be this awful, evil nuisance to the world and to the West. And that can just kept getting kicked down the road to the point where I think Americans believe that Iran is not really this threat. And something has changed in recent years. Their ballistic program was getting far more advanced. They were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So when Trump decided to finally do something about it after so many presidents had kind of ignored it, or as Obama did, just fed it, it just seemed like we were looking for a war to fight. And it was this military adventurism.
It could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
We are not starting a new war. We haven't started a new war. We are ending a war. This has been 47 years of aggression from Iran, and they have largely gone unaccountable for decades of murder, treason, torture, the most disgusting terrorist acts you can imagine of October 7th. Yeah. They killed 43 Americans on the day, let's not forget, in addition to the thousands of Americans they've killed and hundreds of other attacks across the region over the past half century. They started this war with America, and they've largely gone unaccountable for it. Until President Trump took office in his first term and he killed Soleimani in that strike in 2020, which was a righteous kill. Between these two terms of Trump, of course, we had Biden, and prior to that, Obama, who, as you said, fed billions of dollars into this regime. They paid them to stop being mean to us. And instead, what did they do with that money? They took it and they bought missiles and rockets and nuclear fissile material and grew their weapons program to further menace the entire world. So being nice to bullies doesn't work. And it's about time. 3 generations of Americans have dealt with this problem. President Trump's not going to pass this on to a 4th generation to deal with when it's even bigger and stronger than before. That's why this is the right thing to do. It's a tough problem to solve, there's no question, but it's the time to take care of it.
We had 2 Iranian leaders killed, another 2 killed, 2 big guys, Iran's security chief and the head of the Basij, which is like the morality police. He's the man that was responsible for the killings of the thousands of innocent people in January that kind of kicked off, the president's, started moving our forces there all after that. Your response to that and how, in your perception, this is going. We're now a little over 2 weeks in.
It's going very well. Listen, there's no military operation that ever goes perfectly according to plan, but I'd say this is about as close as you're ever going to get, and I believe we're ahead of schedule. We're only 2 weeks into this. When you hear Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor and others lecture us that this is a forever war, we're 2 weeks into this. They've been murdering us for 47 years, and in 2 weeks, we've taken out more of this regime and eliminated more of their capabilities than any other president has in half a century. So I'd say it's been a pretty good 2 weeks. This comes at a cost, no question, but we're weighing the risk to our forces now against the risk of the last 50 years and what the next 50 years will look like with the nuclear armed.
Real quick before I let you go, the president is he kind of says both things at the same time. He's saying that we want to fully end this terror regime in Iran, but at the same time, he's also saying if that's not possible, he thinks we're going to be out relatively soon. Where should we go from here? I mean, should we just mow the lawn hard enough? He says we've got 10 years, we've bought 10 years now, or do we finish this thing off?
I think first and foremost, we got to eliminate their capabilities to project terror around the region, whether that's their Navy, their ability to close the Straits of Hormuz and project proxy groups in the Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthi rebels. But I think the regime's got to go. It's going to take time, but this is the first step in that direction.
Senator Tim Sheehy, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, after a swift military action put Venezuela securely under our thumb, indications tonight that Cuba could fall really at any time. Cuba has been hit with nationwide blackouts as the energy grid collapses. Obviously a result of the U.S. oil blockade. They can't get energy on this island nation because they're no longer getting it from Venezuela. The Cuban people have waited 70 years for this regime to end. They are attacking the Communist Party offices. Communism is very fashionable here in the U.S. Ask somebody that lives in it. A rare riot in the country, the people unafraid of the regime any longer. When the quality of life gets this bad, when there's no power, when everything starts to dry up, what little food they get, the rations that they go to get every week, when that starts to dry up, look out. This tends to happen. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel earlier this week confirming talks with the Trump administration, negotiating the future of his country. New York Times reporting the Trump administration says that the leader must go, just like we saw in Venezuela. Here was Marco Rubio today.
Cuba has an economy that doesn't work and a political and governmental system that can't fix it. So they have to change dramatically. What they announced yesterday is not dramatic enough. It's not going to fix it. The embargo is tied to political change on the island. The embargo is codified. And but the bottom line is their economy doesn't work. It's a non-functional economy. The people in charge, they don't know how to fix it. And so they have to get new people in charge.
All right, that was from today. Congressman Carlos Gimenez is on the House Homeland Security Committee and the only Cuban-born member of Congress. And, sir, it's good to have you back on. What is the situation in your homeland tonight?
Situation is that they don't have any power, they don't have any lights, they have very little food, they don't have any medicine. It is a failed state. It is this regime has to go. And when the Secretary of State is talking about leadership, he's not talking about Diaz-Canel. Diaz-Canel is just a figurehead. Yeah. Really, the people that are running Cuba today are the military, the ones that actually control the entire economy of the island, what's left of that economy. And so when he says that the leadership has to change, that means the entire leadership has to go, not just one man, not just Diaz-Canel. And so you have to have true political change in order to have true economic change and improve the quality of life and the future for the Cuban people.
And how will that happen? Because obviously you can't. It's not going to be like Venezuela where you don't pull Diaz-Canel out and then everything's fine, is what you're saying, right? But what has to happen in Cuba?
No, I think more we just continue the pressure and then have that pressure build up. And you're seeing the Cuban people start to rise up. I think what we need too is a strong message from the president that says that he won't tolerate wholesale slaughter of the Cuban people by the security forces of this regime. And then you'll see more and more of this rising up of the people. They've had enough. They're not only shouting for lights and food, they're shouting for freedom. They go libertad. That's what they're asking for, is freedom. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to rebuild that island. Remember, that island used to be known as the jewel of the Caribbean. It had the second highest standard of living in the Western Hemisphere, and communism has completely wrecked it. Yeah. And they're not just communists, they're also corrupt, and they line their pockets with whatever little is left of that economy. They stick right in their pockets. They're thieves, too. So they got to go.
Got 10 seconds left. If Cuba goes another 3 months without oil with this embargo, what happens?
No, there'll be complete chaos inside Cuba. I mean, they can't take it much longer. You're seeing it. And look, in light of all this repression, they're still going out, and so you'll see more and more and more of it. We need to make sure that we back the Cuban people, so that they can get their freedom.
Congressman Gimenez, thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, coming up, John Thune sounding like Trump today on voter ID, but is it all for show? Congressman Brandon Gill on that up next. Later in news from the left, a gay woman who says she'd be safer in Gaza.
But you would get along with a radical Islamist? Yes. And you're gay? Yes.
Whenever news breaks.
A lot of destruction there. It was really the front lines in the battle.
And wherever it happens.
Humanitarian corridors opened up this morning.
We're trying to go rescue a 96-year-old lady that doesn't have anybody to take care of her.
They're using ingenuity. They refuse to give up.
It's incoming fire. Come on. Yeah, let's get down here.
Newsmax is there for you.
What's gold is new again, pardon the pun. But considering gold has been used as currency since around 550 BC, it has been on fire the past year. I'm here with Daniel Boston, the founder of preserved gold. Why is gold so stable and such a good investment for many people?
Take the central bank, for example, the Federal Reserve. They print money out of thin air, and then they take that printed money to go buy hard assets like gold to protect themselves against the very risks that they're creating. So I always tell people, don't do what the big players are telling you to do. Do what they're doing themselves.
Yeah, watch what they're doing.
That's correct.
Okay. If people are interested in investing with preserved gold, how do they get started?
Text Newsmax to 50505 to get your free information and up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualified purchase. That's right. Text Newsmax to 50505.
All right. No way you can miss it.
I'm David Wright, former New York Mets third baseman, and I support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. I've seen firsthand the great work they do helping our firefighters, our police, and our soldiers and their families. T2T is asking for your support for these brave men and women. Just $11 a month will go a long way and make a big difference. Go to t2t.org to find out more. Let's go Mets, and let's do good together.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that, no needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. No mixing, filling, or storing your own syringes. Tirzepatide helps curb appetite and supports healthier eating by reducing cravings, including for sweets and carbs. And when your appetite feels under control, it can make it easier to eat less and move intentionally towards your weight loss goals. If weight loss has been on your mind, this may be the needle-free option you've been looking for. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint. Getting started is fast and surprisingly accessible. Just complete a quick online physician consultation. Here's how.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim.
We are looking forward to having an important battle on the floor of the Senate this week on the Save America Act. You have to prove citizenship to be able to register to vote in this country. And the second component is that you actually have to show an ID to vote in this country. Pretty much everything you do in your daily life involves showing an ID. Even the Democrats who are complaining loudly about this required a photo ID to get into the Democrat National Convention.
So you got the Senate Majority Leader there, John Thune, sounding a lot like the president on voter ID today, and what kicked off the first day of the SAVE Act showdown in Washington. Lawmakers voted 51-48 to move this act past a procedural hurdle, which will open a debate expected to last for days. Lisa Murkowski, the only Republican senator to join the Democrats in opposition to this. So what's going to happen is the big question. We've got Congressman Brandon Gill from Texas joining us now to talk about this. Good to have you, sir. Thune says, you know, we need to have voter ID, but also saying at the same time about an hour ago in an interview that he doesn't have the votes to bring on the talking filibuster, says he doesn't have the 51, he can't make it work, says it would open up a huge can of worms. What's your response to that from the Senate leader?
Well, it's yet to be seen whether we've got the votes or not, and I think you've got to actually try it to see if we have the votes. You know, this is a bill that the American people are begging for, especially Republican voters, and candidly, it's all Republican voters care about right now. You know, there's not anything else we could be working on that is more important than getting the Save America Act passed. That's why I've said that I'm not going to vote for any Senate bills on the House floor until the Senate gets the Save America Act passed out and gets it to the president's desk. So we'll see if we've got the votes for the talking filibuster, but you've got to at least try for this. You know, if you can't strike out without swinging.
It seems, you know, he just did an interview on Fox about an hour ago, and it seems like he's mortified of messing with the filibuster in any capacity. You know, he was even asked about the thought that Democrats are surely going to end the filibuster if they can get enough votes to do so, that they'll just kill it entirely so they can pass a whole hell of a lot of legislation the next time they get power in Washington. Thune it does not want to touch any of those issues, doesn't want to be a part of any of that, doesn't want to acknowledge what Democrats are likely to do. How do you digest that?
Well, you know, I think the reality is what a lot of senators don't want to do is they don't want to work weekends and they don't want to work long days in order to stick around the Senate floor to actually, you know, be present to vote down a lot of these amendments. It takes a whole lot more effort to do that than, you know, just running business as usual. That's one of the things that we're up against right here. But all of this goes back to voters gave us control of the House. They gave us control of the Senate. They gave us the presidency. This is a bill that both the president and the vast majority of the American people, Republican and Democrat, want. So the idea that we just simply can't get this passed whenever we have that much control, I think is ludicrous. I think the Senate can do it. I think we do have the votes, most likely, to do this via a talking filibuster. We've just got to get the senators to actually do the work.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about immigration into the country. Andy Ogles, one of your fellow congressmen, wants to ban Muslim immigration into the country. He also wants to return to when this country gave preferential treatment to Northern European immigrants into the country that come from stable first world countries, which would take us back to pre-1965. I want you to take a listen. We had him on last night. Take a listen to this.
You see how immigration was weaponized against the American people during the Biden administration. We have people that, quite frankly, don't belong here. When they go into local communities, you can literally watch the crime increase in those communities relative to the migration, the invasion of immigrants into this country.
So you've recently introduced the Somalia Immigration Moratorium Act, imposing a 25-year moratorium, a pause on immigration from Somalia into the United States after we've just seen such an overwhelming amount of fraud coming from this community of people that most of them live in Minnesota, in the state of Minnesota. Your response to Ogles' ideas here in comparison to yours?
Well, listen, I think that the bill that I put forward is not, of course, a comprehensive immigration reform bill. It's simply saying that we shouldn't be bringing in people from Somalia, which I think most people agree with us on. You know, the purpose of our immigration system is to serve the American people. We don't have an obligation to bring anybody into our country or allow anybody to immigrate here unless it benefits us, benefits our people, and makes America stronger. So I think that should be the starting premise of any immigration policy. And unfortunately, right now, that's simply not the case. We've got chain migration where about 250,000 people are coming into the United States every year. We don't know who they are. Somebody comes in and then they bring their cousin, and then they bring their cousin's cousin, and then their cousin's cousin's children, and so on indefinitely. That is idiotic. Secondly, we've got all kinds of diversity visa lotteries. You know, a serious immigration system does not allow people to come in via diversity lottery. That also is idiotic. So there's a variety of reforms that we need to put into place to rationalize our immigration system. I think we need to drastically reduce legal immigration, and we need to ensure that the people who are coming here with ideologies that are actually compatible with our governing system.
Yeah, that's the big one. And then the reduction, I think, in legal immigration, just to get this country feeling a little bit more stable and a little bit like it always has, I think is critically important. Congressman Gill, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right, coming up here, independent journalist Nick Shirley goes to California and finds the fraud could blow Minnesota out of the water. Gavin Newsom's panicked, childish response says it all. Up next.
Mike Hammond here, founder of Signal Relief. Meet Dr. Beth Dupree, breast cancer surgeon for over 35 years.
In my surgical career, I have treated thousands of patients, and finding effective pain relief has always been a priority. Believe me, I was skeptical, but Signal Relief caught my attention because it actually works. Clinical trials show over 85% of participants felt relief within 72 hours, with nearly half noticing a significant difference in just 15 minutes. Just place it near or above wherever you have the pain, whether it's your back, your shoulder, your neck, or your knee. Signal Relief Patch brings proven relief. I recommend it to my patients, family, and friends, and I get to witness and experience their pain relief firsthand, and that brings a smile to my face.
Join the hundreds of thousands who have experienced relief with the Signal Relief Patch, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Trust Dr. Dupree and me. The patch works.
Yep, that's there. Is the gauge supposed to say empty? You can't trust those things. Don't worry, we're tethered for safety.
Asking the right question can greatly impact your future.
Are you certified for this? Technically, no.
Especially when it comes to your finances.
Do you have a question?
Are you a certified financial planner?
Yes, I'm a CFP professional.
CFP professionals are committed to acting in your best interest. That's why it's gotta be a CFP. Find your CFP professional at letsmakeaplan.org.
Make your tax refund go places at Blue Compass RV. Lock in lower rates now. New RVs from $98 a month. Every RV includes a VIP membership to RV Complete. Over $5,000 in value. Shop tax refund specials at Blue Compass RV.
I've had the highest mountains. I've had the deepest river. I'll take it in, but don't look down. 'Cause I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of the world.
For the champions you love, trust Cosequin, the #1 vet-recommended retail joint health supplement brand. Cosequin.
Is it just the mustache? No. It's the way he brings me a fresh cup of Black Radical coffee.
Honey, you having a Riley Green dream again?
Just give me 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So Dale, you really need to get that colon cancer screening. Colon cancer screening.
Dad, it's been forever. I need to be in there. Wrap it up. Come on, Dad. It's taking forever. How much longer? It's been an hour. Are you done yet?
Dale, don't worry. We can do it with just a blood test. Shield.
Okay, let's do it.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved Shield from the company trusted in blood tests for cancer for over a decade.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
That space that's right behind me in that doorway, that is the site of a location that was shut down because they had a fake hospice center. The question I'm asking is, what about the other 42 in that 4-block area? Why do they stay open? This kind of fraud is not a flaw, it's a feature. Why would anyone let this happen? The president's not to tolerate it. He is angry. It's so bad, at some point you have to wonder, did you let it go on purpose?
It was a heck of a moment there. Remember when Dr. Oz went to L.A., found potentially billions in hospice fraud tied to Russian and Armenian mobsters? It's a wild story from earlier this year. A major update to that story that we brought you with Dr. Oz, including 42 total hospice facilities within a 4-block radius in Van Nuys. 42 in 4 blocks in one part of L.A. Is what we're now uncovering here. Trump has put J.D. Vance in charge of a fraud task force, and he's indicating that California is likely the bullseye.
This is a big thing that we're doing. It's about fraud, having to do with all the fraud that's taking place in our country. We know California is many times worse, but Minnesota's terrible. They're all terrible. Those cities are terrible. They're crooked. They make money. They gain power, and we have to expose them. And we have to catch them.
What this executive order does is force the entire apparatus of the federal government to do 2 things. Stop the fraud in the American taxpayer and make sure that the benefits that ought by right go to American citizens and not to fraudsters.
Hearing that, Gavin Newsom, eyeing 2028 in the White House, is now sweating bullets. And it's coming from all different places. CBS News reporting we visited Ground Zero for hospice fraud, Los Angeles. 137 hospices operating along Van Nuys Boulevard alone. More than half show signs the state has outlined as indicators of fraud. 89 companies registered to a single building in Van Nuys. 89 hospices in one building. 72 have multiple signs that the state says could indicate fraud. Nick Shirley, the star of the Minneapolis fraud story himself, remember this kid? Says he's already found $170 million in fraud in California in just one visit. It's amazing how much of the money they throw away. Gavin Newsom's response to Nick Shirley is this meme, saying that Nick Shirley is this creepy-looking guy hey, can I see your kids? That's how he's responding to the revelation that he's been allowing millions, if not billions, of our federal dollars be wasted flowing through his state of California. A pathetic, desperate man, as always, a pathetic and desperate cope by Newsom and his camp, and an indicator of just how little he cares about the responsibilities of governing and how little he cares about your money. Steve Hilton is running to be the next governor of California. He joins us now. Ben Ferguson is the host of the Ben Ferguson Show. Good to have you both here. Steve, that meme, almost more than the story itself, is more obnoxious. The way he responds to this kid for exposing his failures.
It's disgusting. And you put it perfectly. It's total contempt for taxpayers in California, taxpayers across the country who are funding a lot of this, and for his responsibilities as governor, exactly as you say. He doesn't care. And his answer to he's got an answer for everything, but he doesn't have a solution for anything. And this whole fraud story really gets to the heart of the big question here in California, which is, how is it possible that we pay the highest taxes in the country for the worst results? That they've nearly doubled the budget of the state of California in the last 5 years, yet everything's got worse. It's literally gone from 180 billion to 350 billion in 5 years. And we have record homelessness, the school results for a disaster, highest poverty rate, highest unemployment rate, highest cost of living, worst roads, worst business climate, the worst performing state in America for the highest taxes and the highest spending. Yeah. And this is part of the answer, this massive, epic fraud. And there's so many people looking at it. I mean, you've got Nick Shirley, you've got the federal government, you've got the state auditor in California, and my own operation, CalDOGE, the California Department of Government Efficiency. Yep. We've found $370 million stolen from the cannabis tax fund. We found $1 billion from the climate fund and from the homelessness fund the other day. It's a scandal of epic proportions.
Yeah, and Steve, just real quick, I think you should make billboards that just says our state's budget has doubled in 5 years. SteveHilton.com. I think that would be so effective. People get it. They get it, what's going on in your state. Ben, the response from Shirley to Gavin Newsom, you realize I'm trying to help America eliminate fraud and waste, right? No need to try and make me look like the bad guy for exposing fraud. Start working for the people and not against them. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think what you understand now about California is California, they went pro in fraud. Like, you look at Minnesota, they're still in the minor leagues. California is ground zero for how you really roll this out. And what Gavin Newsom is so afraid of with Nick Shirley is that he's going to become the same that we just witnessed to the former vice presidential candidate, a guy that said he was so good at a job, who now has to say, I'm not going to run for re-election in Minnesota. That is why he's so terrified. So to be clear, he doesn't care about the fraud. He doesn't care about the waste. He doesn't care about how many addresses or signs there are up at these buildings that are hospice centers that clearly are not. Right. The only thing he cares about is making this story disappear so he can run for president of the United States of America. If he did care about fraud, he would own it and say, we missed some of this. And he'd point the finger at the bad guys and say, we're coming after you. But what is he doing? He knows that this is directly tied to his administration. It's directly tied to the appointees of his government. And there's no way that he can actually go out there and do this and go after the fraud, because it will all come back to him and his leadership.
Amazing story. Really is. I got a tight show. Got to leave it there. Steve Hilton, Ben Ferguson. Good to see you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good to see you, Rob.
John Cornyn fighting Ken Paxton for his Senate seat in Texas. Does Cornyn deserve to keep it? We're going to ask him next.
To a hacker, your tax return isn't just paperwork, it's a gold mine. Your social security number and bank data are their biggest payday of the year. Old antivirus software can't keep up. You need PCmatic. Our default deny technology blocks every single threat that hasn't been pre-approved. If we don't know it, we block it. Secure your return right now. Buy PCmatic antivirus and we will give you PCmatic VPN for free. American-made security for homes, businesses, and government agencies. Visit PCmatic.com.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
My life was constantly interrupted by pee breaks, day and night, until I found Eucora's In Control. It's an herbal supplement that reduces my urgency, leaks, and nighttime bathroom trips. I was at the end of my roll, but now I'm in control. Try today at eucora.com.
He's breathing. Okay, go again.
Children account for 75% of choking deaths.
That's why I recommend everyone have a LifeVac in your home, car, or business.
The LifeVac is simple to use. Just place, push, and pull.
Its suction removes an obstruction out of the airway quickly, saving a life.
If you use your LifeVac for an emergency, we'll replace it for free. Order now.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-543-3822.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dry premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Your Florida life is calling, and we have the answer. Valencia in Florida by GL Homes. Premium 55-plus living in 5 prime Florida locations. Gorgeous new homes from the mid-300s to $2.5 million. World-class resort-style living 24/7. Huge clubhouses, on-site dining, pickleball, and more. Effortless, low-maintenance living. Valencia, your Florida life is calling. Experience more at valenciaflorida.com.
Forget the warm-up. DirecTV got hot. They're on fire with more MLB games than anyone.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
How old are you?
11.
AC shutdown? That's hot. Drain pan overflow? That's damage. Look, it's not that your AC is broken, it's that your drain line is clogged. Get iFlow. iFlow is a smart device that easily installs in less than 15 minutes and automatically dispenses our specially formulated iFlow Biotic cleaning solution that breaks up and flushes the bacteria out of your drain line, keeping your AC clog-free, guaranteed, and costs less than 25 cents per day. Available at these fine retailers or learn more at iflow.com. For enhanced features, get iFlow Pro.
All right, there's a really hot political race in Texas that we are watching closely, the Republican Senate primary runoff in late May between the longtime incumbent Senator John Cornyn and the state's Attorney General Ken Paxton. Paxton's been an incredibly effective fighter for the broader MAGA movement, so this is a very, very interesting fight here in this runoff election in late May. The GOP, hoping to fend off Paxton's attempt here, has spent a fortune on John Cornyn, the most expensive primary in U.S. history. Over $110 million has been spent on this. Trump telling NBC over the weekend he's still mulling over who to endorse here, saying Cornyn and Paxton are both electable. The president says he likes both of them very much, adding an endorsement could hinge on this Save America Act, which is the big story today, right? Democrat John Tallarico, the bizarre, woke religious guy, awaits the winner in the general election between the Democrat and the Republican in the state of Texas. And Senator John Cornyn joins us now. Good to have you back on, sir. I want to start here because let's not beat around the bushes. The party's spending a lot of money to fend off Ken Paxton in this election. Why is it that that is necessary?
Well, unfortunately, most of it was spent because of Wesley Hunt, the third candidate who got in the race and got about 13% of the vote. So Texas is a big state. It's expensive to advertise in, and that's the reason why you've seen the money so far spent. But I believe that if I'm the nominee, there won't need to be a lot of money spent in Texas because I will win rather handily. I won by 10 points in 2020. If Paxton's a nominee, there's an even chance that he would lose. And if he doesn't lose, you'd have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to save him, and it would obviously have a negative impact down ballot.
Let me just pause there for a second. Why do you think Ken Paxton would lose? Because he's a very broadly popular figure in the MAGA movement and among Republicans. And I understand it's Texas, and usually whoever the primary winner is for Republicans is most likely going to win the general election. But why do you think Paxton would not do as well?
Because he's corrupt and he's unfit for office.
Why is he corrupt? Everything I've seen, the Senate, they exonerated him. The DOJ has not charged him. They elected not to charge him with any crime.
Well, he's completely untrustworthy. He lies to his own family. He lies to taxpayers. He lied to his own conservative legal team that he recruited when they turned him into the FBI for interfering with a federal investigation of one of his campaign donors. And so I think there's a good chance that if he were the nominee, that sort of baggage would weigh not only him down, but the entire Republican ticket. I've spent decades building the Republican Party with others, obviously. In Texas, we are a red state, but if Paxton were the nominee, it would be the first opportunity they would have running a guy like Tallarico, who's kind of like Beto O'Rourke 2.0, the first chance they would have to crack that solid red wall.
Well, I want to show this. We had Ken Paxton on our show a few weeks ago. We asked him about this race. We asked him about you. Let's take a listen.
John Cornyn has spent over $100 million trying to save a seat that he's held since for the last 24 years. The guy has not accomplished anything. What has John Cornyn accomplished in his 24 years? Let's give him the whole 40 years he's been in public office. No one has an answer. It's time that we had somebody that can deliver results in Texas, and he's not the guy. He's had his time. He's been there a long time. It's time for John Cornyn to go home.
So when you talk to Republicans that say, you know, you're an establishment guy, and you hear a criticism like that from Ken Paxton, what's your response to that?
Well, it's not true. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was a signature accomplishment of the Trump administration in his first term, I was the whip, the vote counter for making sure that we got that passed. Yeah. The most important tax reform in 25 years. When it came to 3 new Supreme Court justices, I served on the Judiciary Committee, Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh. I was there with other Republicans to get them confirmed. That's not nothing. And now the one big, beautiful bill, the Working Family Tax Cuts Act, we worked hand in glove with President Trump. So either Ken Paxton hasn't been paying attention or he's just intentionally misrepresenting my record. That's why the Border Patrol, the National Border Patrol Council has endorsed me because of my efforts on border security. And as we pointed out, we voted with President Trump 99.3% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, on the votes, you know, it all kind of matches up, and I understand that. I want to ask you about the SAVE Act before I let you go, though, because the president sounds like a lot of it's going to hinge on that. John Thune today just had a press conference earlier today where he sounded a lot like Trump. He's talking about how ridiculous it is that they're objecting to voter ID, that you need ID to go everywhere. The talking points are very similar. I know you're with the president on the SAVE Act. You've said that publicly. But does it matter at all? If Thune is not going to say, we're going to do a talking filibuster in this thing, it's going to fail. And a lot of people think that Thune's up there just trying to parade this up there, knowing it's going to fail just to kind of keep everybody happy in this moment. Are you applying any pressure to turn this into a talking filibuster so there's a chance?
Absolutely. I support the talking filibuster, and I agree with President Trump that this is foundational legislation, because if you have non-citizens voting, if people can vote without showing voter ID, it undermines the whole basis of our political system, and nothing else really counts. So I understand the importance, and I'll be doing everything I can as an original co-sponsor of this bill to support the talking filibuster and to get it on the president's desk.
Fair enough. Senator Cornyn, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up here, Gavin Newsom desperate to label himself a victim so he can fit in with his party and get some kind of votes in 2028, getting some help from his corrupt wife.
Suggesting that someone with dyslexia or any learning difference for that matter is somehow less capable of leading or achieving is extremely ignorant and offensive.
You're careful about what you bring home when shopping, especially when it comes to feeding your family. Shouldn't your investments work the same way? At Timothy Plan, we offer a wide selection of mutual funds and ETFs that can help you allocate assets without compromising your values. From technology to healthcare, energy to real estate, our funds are not only diverse but uncompromising to your values. Timothy Plan funds are filtered to avoid companies involved in abortion, pornography, human trafficking, and other harmful agendas. What you invest in should reflect what you stand for. Are your investments bearing good fruit? What's in your portfolio? Contact your financial advisor today to find out, or contact Timothy Plan directly at 1-800-TIM-PLAN to discover more. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Like a relentless weed, moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms can keep coming back.
Break away to what's possible with Tremfya.
The only IL-23 blocker for Crohn's and UC to offer self-administration from the start.
With symptom relief as early as 4 weeks, remission at 12 weeks, 1 year, and even 2 years.
Some had visible healing of their intestinal lining. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya.
Backed by over 15 years of clinical research. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today.
As we mark 250 years of America, Wounded Warrior Project honors those who serve. They've given us their commitment and sacrifice. We're here to give them a brighter future. Our programs and services help warriors access VA benefits, improve mental and physical health, and thrive for a lifetime. They've given us their best. Join us in supporting them through the next 250 years of strength and resilience. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/USA250.
Go ahead. Crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. This week, the president kind of played right into Gavin Newsom's hands, claiming that he is unfit for office because of his dyslexia. The president actually fell into a trap. Gavin's been trying to paint himself as this once poor, dyslexic kid with a rough childhood to try and gain Democrat sympathies and be viable in 2028 because you have to have a victim story in the Democrat Party. Trump's comments were a huge gift. Gavin's response to every kid with a learning disability: don't let anyone, not even the president of the United States, bully you. Dyslexia is a weakness, isn't a weakness, it's your strength. He's so happy to have something that he can point to make him a victim. Gavin's wife, who was just caught siphoning millions from the state to herself, jumping all over it, so excited to have this new ammunition that she couldn't even fix herself up.
Suggesting that someone with dyslexia, or any learning difference for that matter, is somehow less capable of leading or achieving is extremely ignorant and offensive. Day in and day out, Trump says things that make him unfit for office. A convicted felon, a man found liable for sexual abuse, a man notorious for degrading female journalists, a man who sends masked extremists to terrorize Black and brown communities and rip kids away from their families. The most corrupt president in our nation's history.
There you go. My husband really is not a rich a-hole. You can vote for him, Democrat voters. Next up, pro-Hamas campus terrorist Mahmoud Khalil, somehow still here and as despicable as ever.
It's very racist to ask a Palestinian this question just to validate their views, because I don't see them asking any Israeli or American politician about condemning all the killing in Lebanon and in Palestine and Iran, anywhere. So that sort of like hypocrisy and double standards that's being used against us.
You cannot ask me to condemn Hamas because I kind of love Hamas, so it's racist when you do this to me. Please stop doing this. And finally, a gay woman living in Tampa says she'd be safer in Gaza.
What is it about Trump supporters that you don't think you'd get along with them so well?
I'm gay.
But you would get along with a radical Islamist?
Yes.
And you're gay?
Yes.
You know what? It's time we actually play this out. I'm tired of watching these idiots say things like this. Let's buy some plane tickets. We'll crowdfund them. We'll send her to an Islamic country. We'll see how she feels when she gets there. You can't say this anymore and not be held to it. Mom Donnie somehow turned St. Patrick's Day into more BS about Gaza. Up next.
Closed captioning brought to you by Magna Life Relaxing Leg Cream PM for a good night's sleep.
The discomfort in your legs at night is real. Here's what real customers have to say about Magna Life Relaxing Leg Cream. It's a lifesaver if you have restless legs.
Available at your local retailer.
The human brain is truly incredible. It's a complex network of 100 billion neurons that create cognitive functions surpassing that of supercomputers. Our brain controls our thoughts, our emotions, and our movements. Prevagen contains apoaquarin, originally discovered in jellyfish, and is designed specifically for the brain to help keep it amazing, so that we can continue to live our best life. Prevagen, for your brain.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. Sono Bello changed that in one visit.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit total body transformation everyone is talking about.
I am super happy with my results.
I decided to give Sono Bello a try. Look at me, I have a silhouette. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is Sono Bello's breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative. Our body contouring experts sculpt, tighten, and lift your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside, all in just one visit with less downtime.
Sono Bello targeted the areas diet exercise could not do. I found me again.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and Lift EX is exclusively available at Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist. Book your free, personalized consultation today. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever.
This year is my year thanks to Sono Bello.
Call Sono Bello for your free consultation today.
Newsmax, you like Newsmax? I like it too. Newsmax, you like Newsmax? I like it too.
It's true. Millions of Americans agree with President Trump, and they're switching to Newsmax. They're watching great shows with Greta, Carl Higbie, Rob Schmitt, Finnerty, and more. If you're tired of big media, start watching Newsmax. It's free to start. Go to NewsmaxPlus.com for immediate access. Get all of President Trump's most important events live. Imagine watching Mike Huckabee's Israel Report, our Melania documentary, Clint Eastwood, Charlie Kirk specials, even the movie Jesus of Nazareth by Franco Zeffirelli. Once you start Newsmax Plus, you won't stop. So try it for free. Go to NewsmaxPlus.com, then download the app. It's easy. So make the switch to Newsmax Plus today.
Finally tonight, St. Patrick's Day speech, and our smiley mayor, Mamdani in New York, of course, turns it into Muslim propaganda.
I say this as over the past few years, as we've witnessed a genocide unfold before our eyes, there has been deafening silence from so many. For those who have long cared about universal human rights and the extension of them to Palestinians, silence, however, is nothing new. Who can better understand those who weep than those who have been made to weep for so long? The story of the Irish, both in Ireland and in New York City, is at one time a story of oppression, of subjugation, and of discrimination.
How can I turn St. Patrick's Day into woke Marxism with Mamdani? Finnerty's up next. Finnerty's an Irish guy. You should be offended by that.
He is the mayor of a city that was built with strong Irish hands. Why not just honor the history of Irish immigration?
That doesn't
legal Irish immigration, right? Ellis Island, you came here legally, not illegally. Instead, he makes it about himself. He's just such a loser. I just, every time I watch him, I'm like, you missed the moment. Donald Trump does the easy parts of being president, right? This guy's a failure.
When did the Finnertys get here?
1840, Brian Finnerty doomed by a potato. True story. True story. Doomed by a potato.
No.
And everyone's like so proud. I'm like, I don't know if it's like so proud, like it was a potato. Rob, we got to leave it there, bud. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We'll see you.